to another episode of our Lessons from Quarantine. My name is Terry Wada. I'm with Collabo Creative, a local service design company in Indianapolis. And we are coming at you. This is our last day, day 5 of our week-long series on Lessons from Quarantine, where we've been talking to expert learners about what lessons have they learned during this time of quarantine, because there's so much reflection that happens and everyone's been sharing kind of their voices and the lessons they've been learning, but they've just kind of been all in different places. And we thought it would be a great opportunity as our society and our businesses start to reopen, that we capture those lessons learned before they are lost and we go back to the way things were, because that's not what we want. We want to make sure that we have learned from the experiences that we've had and that we come out on the other side as better human beings, as better societies, as better people, so that we can be better to each other. So today I have two amazing friends of mine. These are two wonderful people that I have learned so much from, and it's really kind of amazing because one person I've known for over a decade, we've established, and have had so many experiences together that I've learned so much from her, and the other person, just a new friend within the past year, but still so much insights and reflections that I've gotten in my interactions with them. So I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves before, and let you know why they are expert learners, so that you can hear their lessons that they have to share. So let's start with you, Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Adams, and I am sort of from the Indianapolis area. It's the closest place that as a military kid, the closest thing that I'll have to call home. I currently live near Butler University in the Butler-Tarkton neighborhood. And I think just my name and location.
Well, what makes you an
expert? Good. Oh, right. So I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me about being an expert learner is just being curious, in the sense of I love murder mysteries and detective stories and the whodunits, and like figuring out the story or the root cause or why, or when someone says something, it's like, what do you mean? Like, what is that? Or like looking into a fact. So I think it's just for me, allowing myself to follow the rabbit trail a little bit, or go into the rabbit hole, which is the right one. I don't know. We could call it a gopher trail into the rabbit hole. At any rate, allowing myself that time and energy to answer the questions that I have, because I feel like a lot of us have these questions, and sometimes ignore them or don't go that far. And even sometimes when I'm tired, it's like, man, we deserve to know these things. And I think that's one of the things through my learning journey early on was, man, I have all these questions, but I'm afraid to ask them. And a big part that has been a part of my career is taking a stand and being like, no, I deserve to understand more about this, whether it's finding a safe person within the organization to like ask questions that I think might be stupid. But they turn out to be completely valid, and questions that a lot of other people had. So like allowing my curiosity, being open and honest, and even maybe sometimes childlike with it, and then not being embarrassed by it, I guess.
Oh, I love it. Thanks. Yes, right. Like being brave to ask those questions that might not feel like great questions, but like every teacher said, there is no dumb question, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and our other guest on our call.
Yeah, so I am Cate, and I live in Fishers. I'm married, and I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm a leadership consultant with a group called Kairos Consulting. And what makes me an expert learner? So there is, Stephanie, as you were talking, even before you said the word curiosity, I was thinking curiosity. And I think that it is, especially in the work that I do with sitting across it used to be the table and now it's, you know, a Zoom screen, but sitting across the Zoom screen from executive clients is there's an opportunity there to be curious about another person's story, about another person's mind and the way that they process the world, the way they think about the world. And I think some of the things that are more exciting to me about that is trying to pay attention to when I'm listening to them, is I try to pay attention to what's at the margins. Mm-hmm. So like they may have this narrative, but I'm actually looking for the thing that's kind of an anomaly that they sort of may gloss over and not think is that important. Mm-hmm. And it's like, actually, I want to find what's in your back pocket, and I want to talk about what's in your back pocket, because I think that's actually like where the best stuff is, that we tend to, for one reason or another, trying to manage status or, you know, trying self-protective or defensive behaviors or this, that, or whatever is like, I want people to feel psychologically safe enough that they can talk about what's in their back pocket, figuratively speaking. So, yeah, I think it's curiosity. It's curiosity about people and curiosity about what makes people, an individual, unique and special and interesting, even if they don't think that it's unique, special, and interesting themselves. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I know this of both of you because I know both of you, but you don't know each other so well. So I think this is going to be a really great conversation because I have two amazingly curious people, right? And you guys are both just in the way you approach, how you approach other people and how you approach different situations with that openness and curiosity and willingness and bravery to ask those questions, right? Like, I know, Wes, you poke at me in certain areas, and I'm just like, I didn't even want to talk about that, but okay, that's what we'll talk about. Well, so before we jump into our lessons learned, I always like to start on a high note. So what's one thing that you guys are grateful for today? And let's pass that to Wes.
Yeah. I'm grateful for my family, the amount of time that I've gotten to spend with them during quarantine has actually been really great. And just because of the amount of time margin that we have now, not commuting anywhere, I just am able to, you know, pop out and say hello to my kids and, you know, walk by, grab a snack, come back in. So yeah, I'm thankful for my family.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And you, Steph? What's one thing you're grateful for?
I'm just unbelievably grateful for the opportunity to be outside, or like mobility, like going for a bike ride, going for a walk, going for a jog, the ability and I think maybe privilege of having like this. So I'm like, our house is totally full right now. Like my brother and his wife and his baby are living upstairs, and I have my kid and my husband and and I have 2 dogs. And so it's like, you just step outside and you feel like you have space, mm-hmm. and there's space that you can occupy, and it is kind of all yours sort of for now, because there's not a lot of other people outside, really. There are more as it continues, but at any rate, I'm just incredibly thankful for nature and the weather, although today's kind of crappy, but overall, in general.
It's not snowing and it's not freezing, so.
And it's not so hot that we want to just give up. So, I'm really, really thankful for those things.
That's awesome. And I'm kind of been hearing both of what you had identified. It's like those small things, right? Like a lot of times the things we take for granted, we always assume our family's going to be there. They're home every time we're there. They're there every time we get up. And like being outside, right? Like just these really simple gratitudes where it's kind of nice that you start to realize these small things. So awesome. Thank you for sharing what you are grateful for today with me. And so what we'll do is let's just jump in. We'll jump into asking you what your lesson learned is, or what's one lesson that you learned during quarantine. I'm going to throw it back to Stephanie. So Stephanie, what's one thing that you learned during quarantine that you want to share with us, and a little bit about how you learned that?
I mean, absolutely. I think one thing that I've learned, I mean, on a very personal level, is that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, I think we still have quite a while to go before there's the next normal or future normal, however we want to phrase that. And this has been a huge time to process. I know we've been using the word reflection, but I think on a deep level, there's, like a lot of us fill our lives with so many fun things or work things or what have you things. And the lack of them, you have to really find peace with connecting with yourself. And what does that mean in your feelings and how you feel and why you feel those things. And I mean, this time has been a beautiful moment to really connect with, yourself, but also like the you want to be, and how you're feeling and why you're feeling and why those feelings are important and valid, and meeting yourself where you are. And I feel like I've like the how did I come to these, it's okay to not be okay, is because I'm, if you know me, which you do now, all of you in the ethers, you know me, like I'm a busy person. I like being busy. I like having lots of projects. I'm very busy and active with my family. But without those things, you really have a lot of time to sit with yourself. And I often will not address the elephant in the room, which is, man, I'm tired, or man, I need some rest, or geez, I don't know if I should do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I just want to hang out. And so like there's an element of self-care there to say, you know what, I'm exhausted, I'm going to take a nap. Or, hey, I'm not going to do, like, so saying no, and giving in a way that I can give without depleting myself. So, and then also being like, hey guys, I'm not okay today. And like vocalizing that. Cause I think in our culture, a big piece is adapt and overcome. Like, you're not American if you're not strong. And I think there's a strength in vulnerability, and there's a strength in acknowledging, it's not weakness, it's acknowledging that you have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very difficult time
mm-hmm.
for lots of people in a lot of different ways. And that's where I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I mean, that's part of how I, hey, my therapist is like, those are feelings and it's all right. And it's like, really? Like, thanks. I've, mentors. I feel like this has been a huge moment where folks are so interesting and willing to give and collaborate and talk, and there's no wrong way to give.
Mm-hmm.
Even small things feel huge now. So I hope I answered your question.
I think so. I think you gave us a lot.
Okay.
You gave me a lot to think about, because I was just like, oh yeah, feeling. Yes, we should talk about feelings, because that is, I think what you bring up is really important. It's the idea of vulnerability, and usually how we connect it to weakness, but it's really it's a really brave thing to do, which takes a lot of courage. And I know, Wes, you probably have lots to build off of here, but I also want to hear your lesson learned as well.
Yeah. It sounds like I'm just copying everything that Stephanie's saying. So, yeah, I think that, my head goes into it splits into 3 different kind of pathways, and you'll hear my daughter Lily banging on the door right now as we're talking. So it's real. Yeah. So, my head goes into 3 different pathways when we ask the question about what did you learn? And part of me wants to talk about the sourdough starter, and fermentation. Another part of me wants to talk about the creativity that I've seen just in my neighborhood and out and about. But I think, like, continuing on with the line that I think is maybe the most important thing that I've learned during this is how to be alone with myself. And what I mean by that is anybody who knows me well knows that I might actually spend a great deal of time by myself, either reading or writing or just being contemplative and thoughtful and whatever else. But I realized during all of this that, like, a lot of that time spent by myself was actually spent, if you thought about it, like practicing for a performance in a way. It wasn't actual time spent on like taking good care and acknowledging my authentic self, and I believe my most creative self. And so, like, learning to be aware of when I find myself spending that time alone, of like being disciplined about not doing it for an audience, which is a little strange to think about, that I'm doing it by myself, but like I'm doing it by myself, or I can find myself doing it by myself for an audience later, right? And sort of setting that aside and realizing that it's okay to just sort of like get to know yourself on your own terms. And so that's been, I think, a really important lesson learned, that I'm still learning, that I still have to be very conscious of, but have found a lot of generativity in that space. So just meaning that when I find the time to find that space, I end up showing up better as a team member with my consulting group. I end up actually being more creative later on once I found that space. So yeah, these are some thoughts.
Nice. I love it. Well, I think what you get to is that idea of intention, right? Why are you doing the preparation? Why are you doing the growth? Why are you doing the reflection? And it can be colored by our intention, right? Whether or not it's for future use or if it is just for internal benefit, right?
Right.
At least that's what I'm
and
hearing. Yeah. What do you
well,
guys?
and I like what Wesley, I mean, what Wes is, you know, like, this is the Olympics. This is like the mental health Olympics. You know, if you meditated before, if you did yoga before, or if you were, you know, like in some kind of place of self-improvement or whatever before, like this, like you, everything from this moment until now, or that moment until now, I don't know how to say it. Like, this is your practice. And I mean, you have arrived to the space that we have been working towards. It's very, I mean, arriving to yourself is an intense moment.
And
thank you for talking about it.
Yeah, and there's, like you mentioned, there's fewer distractions and opportunities to just keep the volume up, right? Like just keep the noise rolling. So we ignore this other stuff. And like when we find ourselves in kind of this forced isolation, is like, it's certainly, like, isolation and loneliness certainly has like an impact on anybody's mental health, period. And like, in addition to that, like, now we've found ourselves confronting things that are very rare in our society, like silence and solitude and stillness. And you sort of find these things sitting on your kitchen table and you're like, what do I do with those three things here? I'm not sure how they got here, but they're here. And, you know, what do I do? How do I pick this up and start to play with it? You know, is it, I don't know what to do with these things. And so I think on the one end of the spectrum, how needed and healthy is it for our culture to have to confront those things: silence, stillness, solitude, what an opportunity that is. But yeah, anyways.
No, I love it. I love what you guys are talking. And I knew this was going to be such a rich conversation because you guys can just, you have similar perspectives and backgrounds where, and the way that you talk about them is just, it's so wonderful. Like I love your metaphor, Stephanie. Like this is the mental health Olympics. I've never thought about that, but yes, you are spot on.
And can I ask you, Stephanie, what role, if any, has creativity played in those Olympics for you?
I feel like creativity in this moment is a huge, I loved your, you were talking about like the creativity of your neighbors. And it came to mind for me, like I've always wanted to learn how to make scones. So I made scones. I made so many scones that I went and I delivered them to friends and family. Safety first, of course. I want to learn to make tarts. I made tarts. I am growing a garden, and I haven't grown a garden in years, but it's sort of like I wanted to create it. So I spent days like designing the layout and then ditching that layout and just doing whatever happened in my backyard now.
Yeah.
So it's creativity, I think, for me has sort of replaced the activities, has taken the place of my discord. Like I call it, like all these things that were not always harmonious. Like I overfilled my schedule often. And I'm replacing it with like, okay, well, what do I want to create? And for me, my making is, baking, gardening. I've looked into other projects, and I don't know if you follow Amy Poehler and Nick Offerman, but their makers show.
Love it.
They're having a challenge on like, how do you make things out of beans and beads? Like things that you can make anywhere. And I'm like, this is such a brilliant time, but it's also an exhausting time. So it's like, there's a bunch of things that I've had in my, backlog of things I've wanted to make. Like there's a story that I want to write, and those things are equated with work right now. And so I'm finding that things that fulfill me, such as baking things that I can give to others, things that like fill my cup versus deplete my cup, such as writing out the story that apparently I really want to write, but don't have the motivation for. There's a creativity, and then there's also that creative guilt of, well, I could be doing more. I could learn how to sew masks. I could make 1 million little sock masks, and you can cut those up in like 2 seconds, but I haven't done any of that. And so like there's that sort of guilt around, I could always be doing more. But like what you were saying earlier around like really meeting yourself and saying, it's okay to not do more. It's okay to, I've really been like, so when I say the Olympics, I've been working on the kind of concept of surrender for like the last year, maybe. Like, what does surrender mean?
Fascinating.
And now I'm experiencing it at a much deeper level of, I'm a planner. Like I try to be a strategist to whatever professional level that I'm capable of. But I cannot strategize the next steps because we do not know enough to build any kind of case for a future. We're starting to, and I love one of my mentors and friends. She still works at Crown Equipment Corporation, Jill Lawrence. Recent promotion, congrats. She, yeah, right. She, we were on the phone recently, and she was like, look, I wrote it down, but she's like, avoid what ifs, respond to the situation that happened. And that's, to your point around my, like the three things, I'm almost sitting down to the point and saying, I'm not going to decide any of them. I'm going to see how this lays out today. and I'm not going to be stressed about it. So far it's working today.
Well,
it doesn't work every day.
It goes with the quote, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I want to just be mindful of our time together because I don't want us to go too far over. But I love what you guys are sharing, and so we launched this series specifically this week because in Indianapolis our stay-at-home order has come to an end, right? And we're seeing this first phase of opening of our economy and of our business and industries here. And I know that other states may have opened sooner, and there are other states that are opening later. But for us, it's happening now. And so we wanted to make sure that we share out these lessons, because as we move back into re-engaging with each other, even though we know it's going to be different, what can we take into this new reality, or this next normal, or whatever we want to call it, tomorrow? How can we apply these lessons that we've learned from this time that we've taken apart into this next period that we're going to be moving into? So what are your thoughts there? Any tactics or tips, or how are you seeing yourself applying this moving forward? We'll start with Wes.
Oh man.
I know you're thinking.
Tactics are so difficult for me. Yeah, so I'll start at the high level, and maybe we can work our way down to something more concrete. But I think, whether it's just simply the mindfulness of being aware of when I am kind of doing things to perform for an audience, so to speak, versus showing up and being authentic in any given context. I think that mindfulness is a tactic, actually. Like it's just observing yourself non-judgmentally and saying, what's going on here and why is that happening? I think I'm going to zoom out to a more meta level. I said I was going to go the other direction. I'm going to go meta. So I think some of the things that we've talked about here, and even just the demonstration of being able to have such vulnerable conversations among strangers, there are things that are very human that we've been exposed to, I think, during this time, that I think that we would be at a loss if we didn't carry them over. Like just the longing for gathering, the humility of being on video chats and seeing each other's homes, and kids banging on doors and whatever else, right? Like the clumsiness, and I think there's something really beautiful in that clumsiness, and I hope that we don't lose it, because it's an opportunity for us to connect in more genuine ways than what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That gave me goosebumps. I love that. Yes, I agree. And I hope that we do carry that forward, right? Show up as you are.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. Okay, Stephanie, how about you?
Wes, I think that's incredibly beautiful. Showing up as you are. I think what I hope to carry out of this is that I think one of my fears is that if our new normal, I'm tempted to call it formal, just because future normal, like our formal.
Nice. Yeah.
Brand it, mine. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that I'm just going to fill it up again. And the lesson that I'm learning, which is, it's okay for me to have space in my life and to preserve that space, and to, in a way, take care of myself by saying no and doing what is healthy in my capacity, while also fulfilling my need to be social. And I'm afraid that I'm just going to open the floodgate and be like, yes, 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 yes. It's so hard right now. I used to have something every weekend, every weeknight, and it wasn't great. And the devoid of it isn't great either. Let's be honest. But I'm hoping that I can figure out a way to create that balance for myself. It's been a nice oasis or bubble, a time bubble to reflect on what I want. Mm-hmm. What does my balance look like? And I guess in the formal, which is future normal, hashtag, yeah, like the Stephanie balance. And how do I maintain that?
Yeah.
Oh, those are fantastic tips or tactics or thoughts, considerations, right, to take into moving into our formal. It started here, coined by Stephanie Adams.
I can share it with you guys. Unless it takes off big time, then we'll talk. But
yeah,
just kidding. It's ours. We can share it.
No, I mean, and so I'm so grateful that you both have, were willing to come on and just show up as your authentic self, like with your daughter at the door, and show up just being the real you and sharing and being vulnerable, because it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of bravery to show up and just share what your experiences has been. Like, as what we do for work is we help people share these stories, but we do it in safe spaces. And I'm asking you to do it with me and the entire world possibly watching on. So it takes an incredible amount of bravery to come on and do that. And so I am so grateful and thankful that you were willing to share this time with me and share your lessons learned, because really, I wanted to hear what people are going through and what kinds of lessons and experiences they've had, because it makes it easier for me and for, I think, all of us to feel more connected when we hear the similar stories and we have the similar lessons learned, or we have completely different ones, because then we realize how different we are and how we can learn from each other. Like, Stephanie, I learned so much. I thought I knew you already, but I know you even more now, mm-hmm. And seeing how you're able to reflect on your, I don't know if we call it like former life, or your, what do we call that now? Because it doesn't seem right to call it their former life, but your prior schedule and routine, right?
Yeah.
And how we can think about that moving forward and be much more intentional in our new formal.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, because I just want to wrap up, and it's always nice to kind of finish on some, what do we say, like quotes or profound words or words of wisdom. And quotes don't always have to come from super famous people. They can come from everyday people just like us. So if you have any last comments or words of wisdom that you want to share, that's like words of wisdom by Wes, words of wisdom by Steph, I'd love to hear them. I won't put you on the spot, Wes. We'll start with Steph.
Yeah, thank you.
It's awesome because I'm going to sit up because I brought up a tiny poem. It's random, right? So I have this really beautiful planner that I use, We Moon, and it has a lot of really positive, like, female imagery and art. And there's a tiny poem by Susa Silva Marie. Forgive me if I said it incorrectly, but it's called Call Yourself. And I feel like it may embody the entire conversation we've had today. So be willing to awaken while the world dissolves before your eyes. Call yourself forth. Call yourself by your true name.
Oh,
I like it.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm going to have to play that back and write it down so I have that on my wall. Thank you so much for sharing that, Steph. Okay, Wes, what do you have?
So I'm going to fall back to a quote that I've loved for a long time, and I'm probably going to butcher it trying to actually quote it, but that's okay. We'll get it in the ballpark. So it's by some French author that I am not going to try to say out loud, but he's the guy that wrote Le Petit Prince. And he said, if you want to build a ship, you don't drum up people to collect wood and swing hammers. You teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And like, I think there's something, again, really special in the moment that we find ourselves in that we don't know that our horizons have sort of like shrunk and come much closer to us, right? So we can't know what's for certain out too far. And so we have to accept these things like wonder and awe, that again, like they're not often found on our kitchen tables. And now we have another thing to have to confront. And so I think that there's for me, a lot of optimism and potential in just that initial seed of like, how do you teach ourselves and each other to long for the endless immensity of the sea? And I think that begins with something like awe and wonder that we have like right now at our doorstep. So where does that take us now? So kind of the mystery is interesting to me for what it's.
Yeah, right?
That's very profound.
Yeah. Well, it brings us full circle with the whole curiosity.
Yeah. Nice. Yes, it does.
Thank you, Wes. Thanks for bringing us all back around. And so just to kind of wrap up, I want to thank, if you are out there watching us, thank you so much. If you've been with us all week, thank you for listening to all of our friends' lessons learned. And hopefully you've taken some of these and were able to either connect with these lessons, or maybe, you had completely different experiences. And if that's the case, call me, because we want to share your lessons out as well, because we are going to be in this space for a while, and we are going to have a extended formal future normal for those of you who just tuned in, which is kind of late. But we are going to have an extended period of this rolling out of this future normal. And so lots of lessons to be learned in this new state, especially as we have new experiences with our new friends that we will make in this new formal. All right. Well, so I want to thank you, especially my guests. So Wes and Steph, thank you so much again for joining me. Thank you for sharing your lessons learned with me. And just thank you so much for being part of my life. You guys have brought so much value and richness to it. And you help me be a better person every single day so that I can continue learning. So what makes me an expert learner is being connected to people like you. So thank you again for being on. All right. And then we'll
my pleasure.
We'll see you later.
All right.